The air crackled with static. Dr. Elias Monroe hunched over his makeshift lab bench, the flickering glow of monitors illuminating his weary face. Outside, the Los Angeles night pulsed with an eerie orange glow, the distant echo of sirens, a grim symphony he knew all too well. Another unexplained inferno reducing the city of angels to ashes. Elias's fingers danced across his keyboard, analyzing the latest fire data. The patterns were baffling, random, unpredictable, almost alive. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his gaze falling on a framed photograph. A man and a cat pet, their faces forever frozen in time. A pang of grief shot through him, a familiar ache that never truly faded. He pushed the photo away, seeking solace in his work. Elias had dedicated his life to unraveling these mysteries, driven by a burning need for answers that ran deeper than scientific curiosity. His only companion in the quiet lab was a sleek black cat named Midnight, its emerald eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the city. Midnight pawed at his arm as if sensing his growing unease. "Dr. Elias Monroe, don't worry, old friend," he murmured, stroking the cat's fur. "We'll get to the bottom of this." 10 years ago, a firestorm had swept through his life, consuming everything he held dear. The memories still haunted him, the acrid smell of smoke, the panicked screams, the agonizing helplessness of watching his world burn. He closed his eyes, the image of his wife and daughter seared into his memory. They had been his everything, his reason for being. Now the city he had sworn to protect was under threat once more. But these were no ordinary fires. They ignited with impossible speed, defying all known laws of combustion. The official investigations always hit a dead end, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and growing fear. Elias knew in his gut that these fires were different, connected by a sinister thread he couldn't quite grasp. He had poured his grief and guilt into his work, becoming a recluse in his pursuit of the truth. His once promising career as a physicist had taken a back seat to his obsession. He had become a ghost, haunting the fringes of the scientific community, his warnings dismissed as the ramblings of a broken man. But Elias refused to be silenced. He owed it to his family, to the city, to himself, to find the truth. Late one night, while analyzing ash samples from a recent fire, Elias noticed something peculiar under his microscope. Tiny glowing particles, almost microscopic in size, shimmered with an otherworldly light. They pulsed with a faint energy unlike anything he had ever encountered. He spent days running tests, his initial skepticism giving way to a chilling realization. This was no earthly phenomenon. He delved into his research, his mind racing. He recalled an unusual meteor shower that had occurred a few months before the fire started. Could there be a connection? He had dismissed it as a coincidence at the time, but now a terrifying possibility emerged. What if these particles, these glowing embers of destruction, were extraterrestrial in origin? The thought sent shivers down his spine. He had always been a man of science, grounded in logic and reason, but the evidence was staring him in the face, challenging everything he thought he knew about the universe. He couldn't ignore it. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something terrifying, something that could change the world as we knew it. Days turned into weeks as Elias tirelessly pieced together the puzzle. He discovered that the glowing particles were a form of alien bacteria, capable of consuming and igniting any material they came into contact with. The meteor shower had deposited them across the city, dormant until activated by the right conditions. But what were those conditions, and how could they be stopped? He knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed help, expertise beyond his own. With Midnight curled up on his desk, a silent observer to his frantic efforts, Elias reached out to his estranged colleagues in the scientific community. He knew they would be skeptical, but he had to try. The fate of Los Angeles, perhaps even the world, hung in the balance. To his surprise, he found a small group of scientists willing to listen. They were intrigued, some even convinced by his findings and the urgency in his voice. A team began to assemble, each member bringing their own unique skills to the table. Biologists, chemists, engineers, all united by a common goal: to understand and neutralize this extraterrestrial threat. The team worked day and night, racing against time as the fires continued to erupt across the city. They set up a makeshift lab in an abandoned warehouse, their sanctuary from the chaos outside. Progress was slow but steady. They managed to isolate the bacteria, studying its properties and searching for a weakness, finally a breakthrough. They discovered that the bacteria thrived in high temperatures but became dormant in extreme cold. A plan began to form, a desperate gamble to contain the threat. They would create a localized cold zone, effectively freezing the bacteria in place. But it was a risky move, fraught with unknowns. As they prepared to implement their plan, alarms blared through the lab. The containment unit holding the bacteria had malfunctioned. The temperature was rising rapidly.
It's adapting!
One of the scientists shouted, his voice laced with panic. Elias watched in horror as the bacteria, now glowing with an intense, angry red, began to escape containment. The battle had just begun.